Thanks for joining us for another episode of Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum where all voices matter. Well, COVID has accelerated automation and modernization in many fields, and this includes the legal profession. We're privileged to have two individuals with a lot of expertise in this area. Jeff Langtaw is the director of dockets.ca, a Dye and Durham company, and Mitch Kowalski is the Gowling WLG visiting professor in legal innovation at the University of Calgary Law School. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Jeff, I'm going to start with you, just to give you an opportunity to say what exactly is dockets.ca and where does that fit in with the need to reform legal services?
Well, dockets.ca is a website which communicates a software platform that we've created to provide a basis on which the courts and tribunals across the country can operate their systems virtually. Now, the need for this arose quite dramatically and more accentuated as a consequence of COVID-19. And the courts found that they were having difficulty operating, of course, because they were based primarily in a paper-based system that had been used for many, many years. And so there was quite a need that was developed as a consequence of that. And as a consequence, our group got together. We developed a program that allows for complete communication system, document exchange, and so forth, very much the way that you would operate in a live courtroom. In other words, the platform itself is intuitively works very much the way that you would work as a lawyer and other people as if you were actually in a live courtroom.
Makes sense. Now, Mitch, I'm going to give you a chance because you are an author of a book about reimagining legal services for the 21st century. So I guess that's a broad topic, but maybe start with why is that necessary?
Yeah, well, the short answer is user experience, right? The user experience, and by the user, I mean the client who uses legal services for buying a house, getting a divorce, litigating over some kind of dispute, hasn't changed in decades, in perhaps even 100 years. And so as a service industry, law needs to create a better, more efficient, more cost-effective, more accessible user experience, just like every other service industry out there. And I think what's happened with COVID is we've seen that lawyers can adapt if they're forced to adapt. They just haven't been forced to really adapt and do things differently pre-COVID. So, the time is now. Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah, and how did you? Back to you, Mitch, for a second. How did you arrive at this conclusion? Was it just was it COVID, or it sounds like you had this point of view pre-COVID? So you must have seen parts of the system that were not working well for the user, as you said.
I've been a lawyer for 30 years now, and I started to really think deeply about these things, 2009. So, well pre-COVID, there was clearly, I could see from my own experience as a lawyer and on the other side of the table as a client, and as in-house counsel, you could say, hang on a second, this system is, if you really sat down and thought about it, it doesn't work it's not great. I mean, it works. Is it fantastic? No. Could we do better? 100% we can do better. And so that started me on this journey of saying, okay, if we could recreate this thing, what would it look like? What would it involve? And let's take look at from the user point of view instead of from the lawyer's point of view, which we build everything from the lawyer's point of view instead of the user. So that's really what got me going. And COVID was just fortuitous. It's really pushed people to do it.
Jeff, we got about a minute left before the break. Does that sound familiar to you in terms of your experience and your journey?
Absolutely. Mitch has been leading the charge in this for quite some number of years. I've been a lawyer for 29 years as well, and I've been immersed in using technology for the purposes of providing legal services more efficiently. Because of that background, and as Mitch said, the opportunity arose that the need from the courts and the public became so great that the momentum for change has now come about. And so as a consequence, the door is now open for us to implement many of the things that Mitch is speaking about, and that should be from the user perspective.
Right. We're going to leave it at that. We're going to take a short break, but we'll be back with our guests. Very interesting topic. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, talking about reforming legal services, here with Jeff Langto. He's the director of dockets.ca. We also have with us Mitch Kowalski. He is the Gowling Visiting Professor in Legal Innovation at the University of Calgary Law School. To both of you gentlemen, maybe start with you, Mitch. I'd like to understand what role the Canadian lawyer plays in all of this reform and innovation. How do Canadian lawyers need to modernize to make themselves and their law firms more efficient?
Sure. It's simply putting together the right mix of people, process, and technology. Right? So does everything have to be done by the lawyer to the file? The answer is no. Okay. So what other skill sets are available in the marketplace that help you? Law clerks, your admin staff. How do you train people to do various parts of the legal service so that you can provide a more accessible, cost-effective way? How can you best invest in technology? What's the right technology for you, right? Not every practice needs every single wild, crazy AI-driven technology out there, but take a hard look at what you really need given what you do and what your clients are asking you to do. Ask your clients, what is it? How would they like to receive those legal services? This is a question we never ask. It's always, this is the way we do it, take it or leave it, and here's my bill. And then look at your processes. How do you intermingle the people with the technology? Is there duplication of steps? Are the wrong people doing the wrong things at the wrong time? And that's causing delays, it's causing maybe some errors, and it's causing a cost increase. So those are the things that lawyers should be looking at.
Jeff, thank you for that. Jeff, from your point of view, same question, but I'm going to add an overlay on it. I think one of you gentlemen did mention that sometimes lawyers are a tad hidebound. So how do you break through that?
Well, I think the springboard for breaking through that problem is this. Many people are able to learn new things by applying concepts and processes that they're already familiar with in another venue or for another purpose. And so Mitch said this earlier, and so did I, that we need to implement technology to help law firms and the public become more efficient in doing the work they need to do in the legal services field. But the only way that that's going to be learned and adopted, and think about how many times you have computer programs on your system that you don't use because you've never really learned to use them quite well. Well, lawyers and the public and the judges are going to be much more willing to adopt programs that help them do their work if, in fact, the systems work the way they're already working. And as a consequence of that, they're going to be able to learn the technology faster. They're going to be able to use it more efficiently. And they're also going to have one other key element, and it's this, that people have to be able to trust the system. And if they're familiar with the system and how the legal system works and the technology helps them do that job better and faster, and they can trust the way that it's working, then it's more likely to be adopted.
Just to follow up on that one, Jeff, I understand what you're saying. Sometimes people are hidebound or connected to the previous system, not because they trust it, but because it's the only thing they know. So how do you build in that trust for something that may be untested or untried in their universe?
Yeah, it is very difficult, and I hear you. And it's also difficult because when they use those systems and they don't want to move them, they put a lot of work into those particular systems. But the whole technology sector is evolving. It's becoming the point where certain technologies that are being used are going to have to be left behind because they're not meeting the needs. And so it comes back to the question of need. So at some point, there's going to be a tipping point where people may want to stay with some of the systems they're using now, but they know that as a matter of business, for instance, for a law firm, that if they don't make the step to move forward with new technology, they're going to be left behind. So it's that age-old problem, isn't it? There are many things that we like doing a certain way, and we don't want to leave those, but there's always that tipping point where we can't stay where we are. And if we are, we're going to be left behind. And so to answer your question, there is that tipping point that's coming, particularly for the court system. And I think that's the solution to having people move forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. I just signed on to Spotify because I couldn't get to my podcast favorites that I like because they're only on Spotify all of a sudden. I resisted it for all this time, and now I have to go with the flow. So that's just a prosaic example, perhaps. We're going to continue with this important discussion after the break. And we're back here at Boom and Bust. I'm your host, as always, Tony Clement, with Jeff Langto, director of dockets.ca, and Mitch Kowalski, the Gowling visiting professor in legal innovation at the University of Calgary Law School, talking about legal innovation, law services innovation. Mitch, I'm going to throw this one to you first, this question, because really for our audience, probably not most of them are lawyers, but they do have a stake in the legal justice system. So I guess my question to you and thence to Jeff is, how do all these changes, how is that going to make maybe access to justice easier or better, or, making sure our legal justice system is the best that it can be?
Well, I mean, that's really the crux of the problem is we want to have a really efficient and credible and well-run justice system, which is not what we have. And so if you want people to have the ability to have their disputes adjudicated in a timely and fair manner, you have to look at the systems. I think if you want people to trust the system has to run well for them. And if they perceive the system is not running well, then they're not going to use that system and they're going to find another way to solve their problems, which may or may not work for lawyers and may or may not work for society as a whole. And so we have an obligation to ensure that the system is working for the citizens of this province and of this country.
Well, and that's a really good point. I'm gonna go to you, Jeff, but just make this point. Like we're having, there's a whole political battle, perhaps on trust and faith in established institutions, and if as that degrades, then you can have miscarriages of justice or vigilante justice or what have you. So this is one of the reasons why this is an important topic. But Jeff, not trying to put words in your mouth, but give us your take on why this is important for to have a better legal justice system.
Well, you're absolutely right. So here's the thing: if we think about the rule of law, and if we think about the idea that most people see laws as rules that are enforced with sanctions, it can't only stop there. There's an idea called the law of recognition. And what it means is that the public in general, a large number of the public in general, need to accept the validity of our laws. They need to have the assurance that the legal system is operating properly. And it's that large number of people, law-abiding people, who want to accept our justice system that ensures that our system is operating properly. It's only when there's a tipping point, as you say, the two of you, where trust is lost, where the legal system doesn't operate very well. So based on this law of recognition, it better be that the courts, the lawyers, the paralegals, everybody involved in the legal system have to ensure that the system is transparent and people can feel faith that the system is working efficiently and properly for their needs. Without trust, we are certainly not going to have a system that achieves the ends of justice that we're trying to achieve.
Jeff, just going to continue with you for the next question. You're obviously running this company, dockets.ca. How easy or difficult is it to get funding for something like this?
Well, really, when software development is happening now, in my view, that software development has to come from the private sector, and they have to be able to develop products that can be offered for use, in this instance, say by the government for a court or tribunal system. I think it's unwise in many cases for governments to put forward lots of money in the first place for the development of a system which is not completed, and there's uncertainty about whether the product will ever be delivered. So what we've done at Dawkins is that it's essentially referred to as a commercial off-the-shelf system, meaning that we have developed the system, we've demonstrated the system to many stakeholders, and there is some customization that will be needed between tribunals and the courts. But when we're stepping forward, we're saying the public shouldn't take the risk of the development of large tech solutions. The private sector can do that, compete properly, and come forward for the benefit of the public by offering that completed solution. I think that is the way forward.
Okay, excellent point. We are going to take another brief break. We'll be back for our last segment after that break with Jeff Langto and Mitch Kowalski. Please stay with us. Welcome back to Boom and Bust. I'm your host, Tony Clement, here at the News Forum, talking to Jeff Langto, Director of Dockets.ca, and Mitch Kowalski. He's the Gowling WLG Visiting Professor of Legal Innovation at the University of Calgary Law School, talking about legal services innovation. We've got a great opportunity here to ask Mitch about this because he does teach in front of our wonderful millennial and Gen Z law students. So I'd love to get your perspective, your observation perhaps, of how they see legal innovation and how they see the legal services process as it now stands.
So they're excited. Honestly, they're very, very excited to see what they can do, how they can make the profession better. They are always astounded when they learn at how antiquated or backward many law firms are. Not all law firms, but many law firms are. And so it for them to come into my course and be able to talk freely about, hey, this is what we can do. Hey, this is what I'm used to doing in my life, right? Because keep in mind, they've grown up on technology, right? So they're one of the very first generations that grew up on technology. This is what they're used to. They see technology as a benefit. They're always looking for, how can I do something better? How can I do it faster? How can we do it more cost effectively? And so to be able to speak about those things in the context of legal services is exciting for them, because that's not what they're used to, right? They're assuming that they're going to be thrown into a system that always does things the same way, and to have the freedom to think freely and do things a little bit differently is exciting for them. So I think the profession will be in good hands.
Jeff, a bit of a different question for you, and I'm just going to throw this out there. Are law firms still a good business model?
Well, that's a difficult question because not only are law firms, of course, businesses, as all three of us know, but they also are a profession. And so they have to live up to certain standards that are required of providing services. But firms do one thing, and that is that they gather together lawyers and allow each lawyer to work within specialized areas. With the growth of technology and other information that's out there now, it's very difficult for anybody in any sector to be knowledgeable about every field. And so what law firms do, if they gather together the right people, is they create a critical mass of knowledge where each group has particular knowledge that can service the clients somewhat better. What you may be speaking about is there a sensible idea to be talked about law firms being engaged potentially in different structures with other professionals and so forth? And that's certainly a much more broad question and certainly needs to be discussed.
We've got about a minute and a half left, so I have to split this up between you two gentlemen. Mitch, we'll go with you first. Any future for AI in this legal innovation?
Yeah, I think there is a future. I don't think it's going to be something that touches every practice area. It's going to be very niche. It's going to be driven by exactly what the needs are, litigation being, a good one in terms of trying to predict how a certain set of facts would play out in a courtroom. Would it play out in real estate? Probably not.
Jeff Langto, you've got the last word.
Well, I think that the topic that we're talking about today is going to be talked about more and more. And the reason for that is because COVID has really made a shift in the legal services field to requiring technology to be used, because if it's not, we're going to be at a standstill. And so the things that the three of us are speaking about today, I think are going to be front and center going forward in many different areas.
I want to thank our guests today. That's all the time we have. We may need another show to really delve even more deeply into this fascinating topic. I want to thank Jeff Langto at dockets.ca and Mitch Kowalski of the University of Calgary Law School for being with us today. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really interesting topic, I think, and really a microcosm of how technology is affecting so many different parts of our economy. Obviously, we were focusing in on legal services innovation because it means the administration of justice, whether that is going to be available and efficient and open to the citizens. So lots of interesting thoughts there from Jeff and Mitch about what's going on right now and what could possibly be going on in the future as well. Thanks for watching.